Thank you. Have you ever known exactly what you should do, but you did the exact opposite? Maybe it was waking up early. Maybe it was studying for that exam. Maybe it was that project that you postponed so many times that it ended up ending in a long-term relationship. And afterwards, we tell ourselves, maybe I'm lazy. Maybe I'm not disciplined enough. Maybe my motivation left with that group chat. We talk about motivation as if it's some type of magical creature. If we succeed, we say, I was motivated. But when we fail, we act as motivation personally betrayed us. But what if motivation isn't just about willpower? What if the biggest forces shaping our actions are things that we barely see? Our small habits, the people around us, the environment. Today, I want to talk about something that I call the push you don't see. The hidden factors behind motivation, persistence, and the ability to keep moving forward when life gets difficult. Because motivation isn't something that you have in your hand. It's not on your phone. It's not an app you can find. It's something you have to build, protect. Because you may lose it on a Tuesday, and then you have to rebuild it again on a Wednesday. Let me give you an example. There's probably a student in here, or maybe a teacher, that realizes that they need to get in shape. So at about 1 o'clock in the morning, they make this revelation that they say, tomorrow I'm going to get up at 6 o'clock and I'm going to go get some exercise. The alarm clock goes off at 6 o'clock and somehow they're able to get up. They go for a nice long run. They come back and they feel fantastic. They feel wonderful. They have a glass of water, they take out their phone, and they text everybody they know. Today is a new era in my life. I am going to get healthier. Day 2 comes around, and it goes okay. Day 3, a little bit of a struggle. By the time the 5th day comes around, the alarm clock goes off, and they're laying in bed, and they're looking at the ceiling, and they're holding on to that blanket as if it's some type of emotional support, and they reach over, and they turn off the alarm. And just like that, that great goal that you had to get in shape is over sooner than the free trial was. And you say to yourself, I guess I'm just not motivated. Now, a couple months pass, but this time they want to try something a little bit different. This time they lay out their clothes. They call a friend and say, hey, you want to come and work out with me? They set their goals incrementally, so they're not trying to work really, really hard only at one time. The alarm clock goes off. They get up, their clothes are there, somebody is expecting them, and suddenly this goal doesn't feel so terrifying. They start working out, they do 15, 20 minutes, the next day it increases, and the next day increases, and suddenly the habit sticks. So what changed? Not their personality, not their intellect, certainly not their DNA. The difference was design. The environment changed. The friction changed. The system changed. Because motivation is not constant. Even people who are highly motivated will find some justification for reaching over and turning off that alarm. Behavior science tells us that people are most likely to complete a task if they're simple, specific, and clearly defined. Researchers Edward Locke and Gary Latham found that clear, challenging goals had a higher performance rate than those that were vague. So, basically, specific, clear goals work better. I want to get fit. Not clear. How about this? Tonight, or every night after dinner, I'm going to walk for 20 minutes. Clarity creates direction. So if motivation isn't just a feeling, what actually drives it? There are three powerful drivers to motivation. The first is clarity. Motivation struggles when goals are vague. We say things like, I want to be productive. I want to study more. I want to be a better person. Well, what does that mean? All three of those are wonderful, clear goals. I'm particularly interested in what does being productive mean? Does that mean that if I answer this one email, I'm going to reward myself with 3 hours of scrolling time? Our brains resist uncertainty. But when our brains resist uncertainty, and when goals become concrete, action becomes easier. Instead of saying, I'm going to study tonight, try this. At 7 p.m., I'm going to review chapter 3 in my textbook for 30 minutes in the library. That is something that our brains can handle. The second driver is the environment. We love to say that our success was due to inner strength, but it's not always the case. The environment plays an important role in everything we do. If you're at home and you're studying, and right next to you is your phone, and I think my students can understand this, sooner or later you are going to lean over and you are going to start scrolling. Not only that, after a while you're going to learn what your best friend from elementary school had for lunch. Okay? Sometimes the motivation is high. Okay? In this case, the motivation isn't low. What this case was, the friction was high. Small environmental changes can transform our behavior. Putting your phone in another room. Preparing your materials the next morning so that you're not late for my 9 o'clock class. Small things start to add up, and they make changes that create big results. The third driver is small wins. Progress creates momentum. People love progress, even if it's very small. They become more likely to continue. That's why small habits matter. Reading that one page. Walking for 5 or 10 minutes. Writing that one paragraph. Now, these actions may seem insignificant, but repeated constantly over time, they start to reshape identity. And that shift is powerful. But there's another side of motivation that we don't talk about enough, and it's pressure. It's not that your motivation is being drained because of laziness. It's other factors like exhaustion, isolation, fear, the feeling of being overwhelmed. One important example comes from the history of the Minamata disease in Japan. Now, I'm sure that there's a lot of international students and probably some very young Japanese students who are not familiar with this. But the Minamata disease was caused when a large company was dumping mercury pollution directly into the waterways that had an impact on local fishing communities. And people were suffering for many, many years. But what makes this story especially important is the social pressure surrounding it. People who spoke out were often pushed away. They were ignored. They lost jobs. They lost their communities. Some lost the support from many, many parts. And sadly, many people lost their lives. And over time, the people became exhausted. Not because they were weak, but because carrying difficult truths is incredibly heavy. So there's an important lesson here, and I think it's really, really simple, and I think everybody in here can understand this. We are not motivated all the time. Not our students, not teachers, not people giving TED Talks. More realistic lesson is protect your motivation so that it can survive pressure. That means not carrying everything alone. Isolation destroys persistence. Support protects it. Find people who share the same values as you do. Friends, mentors, communities. Maybe that one guy in your class who you know always knows what the homework assignment is. Collective strength lasts longer than individual willpower. It also means anchoring yourself in purpose, not approval. If your motivation is based on approval, then it is already very fragile. Because sometimes we have wins and nobody's there to clap for us. Sometimes our wins and our successes are very quiet. Another important lesson about motivation is that it fluctuates. For the first couple weeks, maybe you feel like you can do almost anything. But then the next couple weeks, just simply answering that one email feels like climbing Mount Everest. This is normal. The goal is not constant intensity. The goal is to return after setbacks. Finally, respect your limits. Rest is not a weakness. Mental health is not laziness. Burnout is not a personality trait. Long-term persistence requires recovery. So before I finish today, I want to just leave you with a few practical ideas. First, start smaller than you think. You know, that guy who woke up at 1 o'clock in the morning and said, I'm going to have a life-changing moment, it doesn't work. Secondly, make the first step obvious. Lay out your materials beforehand. Reduce friction and make good habits easier than bad ones. Third, track your progress visually. Use a checklist, a calendar, a notebook. Because crossing those little things off your to-do list is somehow incredibly satisfying. Human beings love to finish that to-do list. It's a sense of achievement. Fourth, pair your effort with something enjoyable. Listen to music while you're studying. Take a walk with a friend. Create positive associations with difficult tasks. Because motivation grows when action feels sustainable. So let's return to that student from the beginning. The difference with the student wasn't that they suddenly became stronger. The difference was design. They changed the system. They reduced the friction. They built support. They focused on small wins rather than dramatic transformation. And that's the message that I hope to leave you with here today. Motivation is not something you wait for. It's something you build. And sometimes the push you're waiting for will not come from inside you alone. It comes from the habits that you create, the people who are around you, the environment that you shape, and the small choices that you make every day. Because the push you don't see is often the one that changes everything. Thank you.